I have a special representative from Rotary that I wish to introduce, and his name is Sean Allen. Sean, would you stand? He's a Senior Major Gifts Officer of the Rotary Foundation. A little applause for Sean. If you have estate plans, this is the gentleman you want to confer with. Now, I had alluded at the beginning to the 45 years of marriage, and doing the research for today, I came across some comments from a comedian that I'm sure everyone in this room will know. So if you don't know this comedian, Red Skelton, raise your hand. Even the young people? Well, I'm surprised. He had some tips for a happy marriage, and I want to pass them on to you. He said, "We always hold hands. If I let go, she shops. She has an electric blender, electric toaster, and electric bread maker. She said, there are too many gadgets and no place to sit down, so I bought her an electric chair." That's what Red said. I didn't say it. I'm just passing along. She got a mud pack and looked great for 2 days, then the mud fell off. That was what Red said. You know, he was divorced 5 times. You know that, don't you? We have a very special event that's going to occur right now, and that is 2 special, very special people, both of whom are represented in your directory, in your program. Rosemary Barker Aragon is of the class of Buell of 1964. She spent 35 years in the healthcare field, and she has 3 passions in Rotary: public image and public relations, leadership development, and international service. Rosemary and I had a conversation this morning, and I'd like you to come up, Rosemary. And we will hope that these microphones work. Conversed about her experiences in Ethiopia with National Immunization Day, Mexico, and Guatemala. And as we conversed, she remembered an orphan story that I think is profound. I'm going to ask her to explain that story now.
My husband and I have been to Guatemala 3 times with a Rotary project called Faces of Hope. This is a project in which physicians operate on cleft palate and cleft lip, kids that have cleft palate and cleft lip. And so I was a ward clerk, which meant I was on the after surgery ward with the mothers and the kids and the grandmothers and of course the nursing staff. And because I speak Spanish, unless the moms only spoke in an indigenous language, I could talk to them. So I talked to the moms all the time. And then I noticed there were these little kids that when they came out of surgery, didn't act like the other little kids. They didn't cry. They were really stoic. They didn't ask for food. They just sort of were there looking at you. And so I said to one of the nurses, well, you know, what's with these kids? And she said, well, these are the orphans from the hospital. And then I noticed that the kids that weren't orphans, whose moms were there, were kind of bratty. What they were really doing is they were calling for food. They were saying, I hurt. They were telling mom, I'm afraid. I mean, they were really clear about how they felt. But the little orphan kids didn't. So I came back to Seattle, and my grandson, was, whining about something. And I thought, boy, isn't it great he's the center of the universe. He knows that if he cries or whines or asks, somebody will respond. But the orphan kids knew nobody would respond. I cry, nothing. I ask for food, nothing. I have pain, nothing. So what I say now to my sons and daughter-in-laws and to other people is, if your child cries, or even when they misbehave in the grocery store, as they always do, you should be kind of glad that they know that they're loved enough that they can do that. And that was one of my takeaways of one of my humanitarian trips, that crying is actually sometimes a really good thing, because what it really means is love.
Thank you. A little applause for that story. That put a different blush on that whole issue for me when you told that story, because it represents hope, and those orphans had none. All right, the next person is Kurt Bowen. Kurt, would you come up? I'd ask you to stand by me because I need to read my notes. This is a philosophy major. I don't want to mess up. And his fiancée is getting a PhD in philosophy. So I asked him, and if you read his biography in the program, you will see that this is a man who puts his hands in dirt and is working with people in Guatemala. How does he combine his philosophy and his work with Semilla Nueva? Did I pronounce it correctly, Kurt? And he said, well, he thought for a moment, he said, Aristotle, achieving immediate pleasure produces unhappiness. That's what I got from that. What one is to achieve is the good. You don't set your sights on happiness, you set your sight on good. That reminded me of a quote from Eric Hoffer. Some of you may recognize the longshoreman philosopher, who said, the good society is a society in which people have neither the time nor the inclination to exploit or oppress or otherwise harm their fellow man. Then he said, I also want to refer to Levinas. Human beings find themselves in the face of God of those who are suffering. This is a young man who has garnered several awards, and in the several years that I've known him, I have been deeply impressed with his work and his commitment. He comes from a Catholic background and the social justice background, I believe. So this is a remarkable young man, and I'd like to now have a little applause for Kurt, and then and Kurt and Rosemary are going to talk to each other about strategic planning. Remarkable people up on this podium. So thank you, Rosemary. Here's your microphone.
All right. So Kurt and I thought we'd have a conversation about the subject of strategic partnerships and sustainability in the types of community and international humanitarian work that we do. So just a teeny bit of intro. In my own district, I've been very, very active with international projects in Latin America, also in East Africa. Was the district international services chair and the district foundation chair, which means I've seen a lot of grants and I've seen a lot of post-grant reports from which some of these insights come. So Kurt, just a teeny bit.
Yeah, so I've been working in development now in Central America for the last 9 years. We just finished our first global grant, which was led by District 5400. And just about 2 weeks ago, through some really good leadership from Boise Southwest and a bunch of other clubs in the Valley, started our second global grant in Central America.
So this conversation that Kurt and I are going to have, you're listening in on it, and it's our hope that we'll have a little bit of time for some Q&A at the end. What we wanted to explore today is some of the insights we have about strategic partnerships and sustainability of that kind of work. Rotary right now, with the implementation of the new grant structure and the 6 areas of focus, is looking at strategic partnerships in the following way. That we are looking for strategic partnerships that share our vision, partnerships or partners that help fund what it is that we want to do, ethical partners. Don't think I need to say much more about that one. And partners that are kind of key on the ground of implementation.
And I think a big piece of this for both of us is kind of how do we tailor this conversation to a sentiment that pretty much all of us share. And that sentiment is you should teach somebody how to fish, you shouldn't just keep giving them fish. But what does that mean? Because a lot of times in these big grant proposals, there's this big question about sustainability. But in terms of how do you actually think about that? How do you think about the nitty-gritty? And who are the partners that can help you do that? I think that's one of the big hopes for the conversation today. And we're going to try to leave some time at the end to actually have a dialogue so we can actually keep talking about that. One of the things that I think is really important with this is that there's a lot of needs in the world. And right now we're at a time of incredible need. And if you think about those needs, whether it's democracy, which is having some serious setbacks around the world, whether it's the fact that we have to feed 10 billion people on this planet pretty soon, we're going to have to